Hey guys, I'm going to make a quick video for you on using hills to help make your horse stronger. Now, this is something we've all heard about at some point. The value of riding or driving or even leading your horse up and down hills to strengthen him. And I'm using that term very broadly, strengthen. What I find is that many people don't have a clear focus or strategy for how they're using hills. They sort of hope and assume that if they take their horse out and ride him for a few kilometers through the mountains and get some climbing up and down hills, that therefore he does get stronger. And that's not necessarily true. Just like with human athletes, building strength, improving strength, making physiological adaptations relies on being able to have a repeatable bout of training stimulus that accomplishes what your goal is. And the thing is, most riders head out without having a clear goal for how and why they're using hills. Meanwhile, other riders sort of lament the fact that they may not have access to decent hills, which, as I'll show you here in this quick video, it's not the end of the world, trust me. So bear with me while I try to share my screen, and I'm going to make clear why hills are good, but really how we want to go about them. Hills can be used in three different ways. So first of all, and this is most horses, I think, hills can be used as a movement therapy. So you might have been assigned some hill riding to strengthen your horse's stifles, for example. That would be movement therapy. Or maybe your horse has rehabbed from some sort of lameness or mild neurological condition, and you've been instructed to use hills in some way. That's movement therapy. Now, hills can also be used in more of like a gymnastic strength building way. Like, let's say you want to help your upper level horse, dressage horse, develop more push and power from his hindquarters. And you've been told that going up and down hills is a good way to do that. That would be more of a strength building focus. And the reason I'm pointing out the different uses of hills is that determines how you would approach your hills and what kinds of exercises you do on your hills. Because again, if you just find the biggest hill in your neighborhood and you ride up and down it a bunch, you may accomplish things like increasing your horse's cardio and fatigue resistance, and possibly, some lactic buffering in the muscles. But you don't necessarily get the strength gains that you want because you need those repeatable dosages that make sense for where your horse is. The last way the hills can be used, and honestly, I think it's the smallest group of people, is the sport-specific conditioning. So these are your endurance riders, your 3-day eventers, your combined driving event competitors. These are folks that really do need those long hills because they're trying to accomplish not just cardiovascular gains. They do want that. They also want to develop the stamina involved in those long hill efforts. And that is not something the average recreational horse even benefits from. So again, having a clear idea of what you're after, and I'm going to give examples for these. It will instruct how you use hills and whether or not they're very purposeful for you. So let's start with movement therapy, what I call movement therapy. This is where you want a very short dose of an incline. So this is just a picture of a horse at my barn going across a ditch. You can see that this ditch is quite small. It's only a couple steps downward to the bottom. And then it goes up the other side of the ditch, maybe a couple of steps. And we turn around and we go back and forth across that ditch like at least a half dozen times. But this whole maneuver takes about 10 seconds, if that. Ideally 10 seconds. I mean, I would like if my ditch were a little bit deeper, honestly, but about 10 seconds is a good amount of stimulus to be repeated depending on where your horse is, a number of times within a session. And that's all you need to do. So why is this beneficial? Well, as you can see with this horse here, he has shifted his center of gravity, which typically is sort of underneath the horse's withers in the front of his body. He has rocked that back onto his hind limbs. So you have that balance adjustment. You have a considerable flexion in the hind limbs that you can see here. And so you're getting those neuromuscular coordination efforts that we want, that help a horse improve his overall gymnastic ability. It also helps in a rehab setting when horses have not had that kind of stimulus, that kind of joint flexion, that kind of balance shift, that kind of just navigating terrain differences. So using your terrain like a tool to help offer different stimuluses. Now, again, these are short efforts. So don't despair if you only have access to a short hill or your driveway maybe that's very gradual incline. You don't need a steep hill. These are short repeatable efforts of, as I said, 10 seconds, 20, 30 seconds, not longer than that. You just repeat. Depends on, I'm not giving specific numbers for how many times you repeat, because it really does depend if your horse is like newly rehabbing from something, or let's say it's a horse that has worked exclusively in an arena, like a show horse has just been in an arena, has some fitness, but is just sort of new to riding hills. Those are different cases. So your number of reps would be different. However, I wouldn't prescribe prolonged hills for either of those cases I just gave. It doesn't mean that going out and riding up a long hill is going to be bad for your horse. You're just not going to get the neuromuscular adaptations that you will from these quick, short efforts. So I promise this will be a short video, and here I am yammering along. So here's another example of movement therapy. I'll see if I can get this video to play. This is backing a horse up a hill. I guess I can't figure out how to play my video here. Oops. Anyway, so sorry about that. I can't get this video to play. This is on my YouTube channel if you want to check it out. But this is backing a horse up a gentle slope. So I do want you to notice how gradual the slope is. This is an exercise I give many of you to do in your custom fitness plans that I make for people and their horses. And as you can see, this is maybe a 4% gradient. It's not a steep hill. And that's the point. You're looking for quality of movement. Again, this would be using hills as more of a movement therapy kind of a situation. I start with 4 steps backwards, going backwards up the hill. If that's pretty good, then we would move in the following weeks to 6, 8, 10 steps backwards and forwards. And we would repeat that a number of times based on the horse's fitness level. But again, you have a great pushing backward of the scapula here, which is terrific for horses that tend to be like really crooked and tight on one shoulder, always when you ride them kind of pulling or leaning that direction, like your car out of alignment. This is a great exercise to help in your resolution of that issue. That's just one issue. It's great stretch of the low back and hamstrings. Again, balance shifts. So these are ways that you're using your incline in a movement therapy way. So if your vet says, based on whatever your horse is dealing with, that hills would be good, I'm just trying to help you think outside the box. There's so many ways to use hills that don't involve just going out and trudging for miles up the road, so to speak. On that topic, the ways you can use hills, and again, narrow, shallow, gentle hills are just fine. These are some of the ways I like to have people, especially folks who ride predominantly in the arena, not endurance folks who are out on varied terrain all the time. So if you have access to a slope somewhere on your property, maybe it's a pasture, maybe it's your neighbor's driveway, I don't know, but riding transitions between different speeds in the walk, or even some halt transitions, you can, as I already mentioned, the repeated short bouts. So if you have a super short hill, that's totally fine. You're going to work on having good form in your horse and yourself up and down that short hill a measurable amount of time. Keep track of that number of time. And again, we're talking less than 10 minutes total here when I say keep track of that time. So to get gains, you don't need to go, for the average rider, you don't need to go slog endlessly up long hills. You can ride sideways across the face of the slope. This is an exercise that's in my book, 55 Corrective Exercises for Horses. It is a rehab exercise for stifles in particular, but it is a wonderful exercise. And if you have a young horse, you could lead them or ground drive them with this way of using hills. You can practice lengthening and shortening the horse's stride length going up and down hills. Or you can find a long hill and do what I call your prolonged effort. If your horse is looking for that next level of fitness. So I just point out all the different ways to approach using a hill versus just kind of pointing the horse's nose up the meadow and plodding along. So there's all these creative ways that you can use even a small area that has an incline. So again, this video probably isn't going to play for me. This is on my YouTube channel. You can see I have a lunge line here. This exercise is from my book, Equine Fitness. So now we would be talking about using hills to build strength. So we talked about movement therapy. Now we're talking about strength. So this exercise, again, I'm on that shallow hill or gentle slope. So maybe about a 4% grade. And I'm asking this horse to make about a 15-meter circle around me on a lunge line. And again, he has a lot of shifting of balance. We start in a walk, if that's good and the horse is, handling that okay, and your footing is decent enough, you don't have big holes and things like that out there, then we would progress to a jog. And just a nice, easy jog trot. The version in the Equine Fitness book does also have you then advance the exercise, and you could put a ground pull on either the high side or the low side of your circle. This exercise is wonderful. I mean, it's like a full body workout. Again, we don't do this one long. I have people warm the horse up on flat ground for 10 minutes and then go to the hill with this exercise for 10 minutes total. And that includes both sides. So it's 5 minutes each direction. And then you cool them down on flat ground. And that's a solid little workout for most horses to use a hill. Okay. You're going to get more out of doing something like this than you are, see this steep hill behind me. You're going to get more gymnastic value out of this exercise I'm demonstrating here than walking straight up and straight down the hill that's behind me in this photo here. Now, for sports specific demands, or let's say you have done a lot of maneuvering around on the short little hills or gentle slopes, and you do want to go after some prolonged efforts, it might not be as long as you think. Oh, I wanted to go back. I'm sorry. I do want to point out, when we were talking about adding strength, so I just showed you this exercise here. Okay. Another very common and simple exercise I give people frequently is the exercise of when you're riding the horse, to get the horse's neck lower than its withers. So a nice long and low stretched out neck position, and then extend the walk strides up the slope for 20 to 30 seconds. So you need a hill that's long enough to be able to do 20, 30 seconds. And then at the top, gather your reins up and turn your horse around, and now perform like a working walk or collected walk on the down slope. So again, short, repeatable bouts, and you would do that 8 to 10 reps, again, depending on your horse's needs and where your horse is. So I won't give a specific, I'll give a range, 8 to 10 reps, 30 seconds up, extended walk. You're getting the extensor muscles, turn around, come back down, collected walk. You change the horse's posture and rein length, and you shorten the step, keep them very straight, purposeful, collected walk on the way down. And you repeat that. You're getting the bottom line, the top line. You're getting the lengthening and the shortening of the top line, as well as joint flexion. It's such a great strength builder. Okay. And then that last tier. So remember, we have 3 main goals that can be accomplished with hills. You have movement therapy, you have strength building with short, repeatable efforts, and you have sport specific demands, if that's appropriate for your sport. So this here is a photo of me out on a prolonged hill for, I wasn't conditioning for an endurance ride here, but let's say you were doing competitive trail or trail trials, or you're just going to go horse camping and you don't want your horse to suffer and struggle. You want to get him fit, then you would do some prolonged hill efforts. But again, you don't have to think in terms of miles and miles. A good place to start is 2 to 3 minute intervals, or 2 to 3 minute hills. So find some hills around you that take about 2 to 3 minutes to climb. And you're going to do a few of those on your ride. I do have, if you want to explore more, I have a trail riding conditioning download that you can get on my website at jackbaloo.com if you want to see the structure of how you would put those hills in your conditioning plan for trail riding specifically. But I just want to point out that getting out and heading up long hills is very sport specific. And so if you've been advised by your vet, your physiotherapist, maybe your trainer, like, hey, this horse needs more strength, he needs to ride on some hills, or this horse has a movement dysfunction and he needs some movement therapy, we need to get him out on hills. We use the same term, hills, but what I want you to take away is there's so many different ways to use that hill. And you need to go at it with some focus and some strategy, or you don't get the value of what it is we are trying to accomplish. So I'm going to cut this here because I yammered on way longer than I meant to, but I hope this has shed some light for you all. And I look forward to catching you in a future video. So thank you for tuning in, and catch me for more.